Hello. Welcome to a new Crystal Palace podcast. This is episode 1 of Let's Talk Palace. Of course, it's me, Luke, and every week I will be joined by the same co-host. Lots of you will know him on social media, Henry Swain. How you doing, mate?
I'm really good. I'm excited. We've had this in the works for a while, so I'm excited to get it going. And I think we are going to provide a decent little bit of coverage for Palace going forward this season.
Yeah, for sure. And well, the summer's been crazy. We come from May, FA Cup winners, excitement, all-time high at the trophy parade. Europe has obviously been a mess since. We will talk a little bit about that first on this podcast, but we'll also be talking about transfers. Should we have more squad depth? All of that. And, getting excited for Wembley next week and the start of the Premier League season. Despite the Europa mess, there is a lot to be excited about at Palace at the moment. So first of all, let's dive straight in. So, on the time of recording this, Europa League conference draw is later today. We are asterisked in that competition. We may not be in it, subject to our appeal on Friday. We'll find out on Monday, the 11th of August, if we are in the Europa League or in the Europa Conference League. But, Henry, what's your thoughts on it all? Is it time to accept our fate and move on? Or,
Yeah,
happy we're still fighting?
obviously I'm happy with fighting. I think it would be disappointing if we kind of just rolled over. I think that's one of the main things that I said when it first started was that I just hope that any club that finds himself in a position like this doesn't just, roll over and accept their fate, if you like. But for me, I've kind of been coming to terms with conference, and in some ways, I kind of prefer the idea of being in the Conference League. I think the chance to win it, and then also obviously qualify for the Europa League that way. I also think there are some positives in terms of you're not playing quite as good teams. Maybe there's more opportunities for young players to come in. And looking at the Europa League teams this coming season, there is actually quite a lot of pretty solid opponents in there. So it's not really, it wouldn't really be one where you can rotate majorly. Whereas in the conference, I feel like you bring a couple of the young players in. So yeah, I think I've started to accept the fate. I'm not that confident about Cass. I just feel like if it was going to get overturned, it would have been done by now, and it wouldn't have reached this point. But yeah, for me, I'm just kind of starting to accept it. But I'm looking at the positives in that as well.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some positives to take. We've never been in Europe, so the conference is good. We will be amongst the favourites to win it, which I don't know if that's positive or bad, but it just shows that the quality is definitely a lot different in the Europa League conference. It's interesting. I think obviously we will always have to stand on that hill, so to speak, that, Crystal Palace were mugged off in this whole mess with CAS, with UEFA. I don't know how people are saying Crystal Palace have cheated when the competition hasn't even started yet. It's been a horrible summer for us dealing with people who haven't understood exactly what's going on. And, that's how football goes sometimes. But we have got a top manager in Glasner who has won the Europa League. And if we're in the conference, he will battle so hard to win that competition for us. I kind of agree with you, mate. You got to take some positives. You can't always moan about it. We are kind of in the peak of Crystal Palace at the moment. It will be heartbreaking, if we don't get in the Europa League, of course. But
I think
yeah,
there's
it's
also an
getting close
element
to the
of it.
start of the season.
There's an element of this where it's classic Palace, isn't it? I mean, it was never going to be plain sailing. We win the FA Cup, which is just incredible. We all have the best day of all of our lives, pretty much, undoubtedly. But then something like this comes along. It was never going to be simple. So I think there is something to kind of smile about in that sense. That it doesn't matter how successful we are, whatever we achieve, there will always be the kind of the Palace way style of things happening and panning out. So I think you can take a little bit of happiness from that. That our little club are still the same as they've always been in some ways.
Yeah, for sure. And our fan base, the Homestead Ultras, they've been amazing during this. Fighting UEFA, they will continue to do so for in the Europa League conference, and so many other club fan bases would not be doing what our Ultras have been doing during this. So huge props to them, huge respect to them. Even if the decision stays that we're in the conference, that will not be forgotten. That noise we've made will not be forgotten, and the whole ruling that we might miss out on the Europa League on is probably not going to be there next season. So just highlights how much of a mess it is. But yeah, you said the positives of the Europa League conference. I'm going to quickly just go through the teams we could face, mate, and you tell me how you feel about these. So Lern FC, Santa Clara, Servette, Utrecht, Friedrichstand, SC Midtjylland, AEK Locarno, Legia Warsaw, AIK Stockholm, and ETO FC Győr. So yeah, let me know, mate, what you're thinking.
I think first of all, congratulations on some brilliant pronunciations. There were some tricky ones in there. I think we were speaking just quickly before we started recording. There's some of those that would be ideal as opponents. Larne, obviously playing, well, not obviously, that's rude of me to say, but they play in Northern Ireland, so that would be a nice, local trip in a sense. Although I don't know if you've seen the videos of the Irish fans recently, they're absolutely bloody bonkers. Maybe maybe give the HF a run for their money. But I think there's also some trips that wouldn't be ideal. Santa Clara, as we mentioned before, is just an island off the coast of Portugal.
Yeah.
In terms of the quality, we're still unsure about what these fixtures are between these teams and whether they're Europa League playoffs or conference playoffs. I'd imagine teams like Midtjylland and Legia Warsaw would probably be ending up more in the Europa League. So yeah, I mean, it's one of these where it's kind of, we can talk about the possible opponents, but even after the draw takes place today, we're still not going to know who we're playing. One, because their games aren't finished. Two, because we don't even know what competition we're definitely going to be in yet. So I think looking at the general standard, the difference between the Europa League and the Conference League is astronomical. There's a massive drop off. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, I feel like there's positives for both. Obviously, the money and the kind of coverage that we get from being in the Europa League is much bigger than if we were in the conference. I remember last season, you kind of forget about most of the Conference League games, and then on your YouTube it pops up that Chelsea have spanked someone 9-0, and you're like, oh hello, like that's interesting. We'll have a look at that. But yeah, I think most of those teams would probably be, aside from the Legia Warsaws of this world, proper established European teams who have done it time and time again. And I think I was talking on one of my other podcasts the other day, and we were saying that maybe what Palace are going to notice and Palace fans are going to notice is that, yes, a lot of these teams maybe aren't, you wouldn't say are as good as us. And on paper we should beat, but these are teams that have done the home and away legs time and time again. They're used to that kind of routine. They know what it's like to play away in Europe, play at home in Europe. We've never done that. And only a handful of our players in our squad, if that, have done that as well. So, I'm excited. I'm just kind of waiting to just know for sure what's going on, but that doesn't seem like it's ever going to be told to us.
Yep, so it's mental that this draw is happening today and we still won't know. Forest won't know as well. It is, hurtful for both clubs right now, this whole mess. And finding out the day after the Community Shield, 11th of August, 6 days before the season starts, and 10 days before this playoff is mental, in my opinion. I don't know how it's got to this stage. Well, actually, I feel like I do. UEFA allowing Lyon all the time in the world to sort out their mess. Just sums up how annoying and frustrating this has been for Palace. Lyon were given that whole summer to sort themselves out, and now that's just pushed our plans back even further. Complete mess. But yeah, Legia Warsaw for me is that we definitely don't want. And Midtjylland, their game, that's the Europa League playoff, so the loser drops down to the Conference League. So yeah, as you said, it's so much difference than what could actually happen. And I think it'll be because them two, obviously, their legs of these matches, they'll play each other the next week. So we'll probably find out our opponents 6 days before that playoff, should we're in the Conference League, which to me feels absolutely crazy that you may be having to sort out an away day a week before in August, prime British summer holiday time.
Yeah,
It is.
good luck.
It's
Good luck
going to be
getting to Santa
expensive.
Clara with that little notice. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, mate, we're gonna have to sort out some little pedalo boats, just to get us all there.
Has anybody got a seaplane?
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to get some charters sorted for sure. It'll be a
We'll do a
mess, but
crowd fund.
yeah, yeah, we'll get a few of them going. Like everyone will be fine. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But Europa League Conference, they do have like registration rules, and we've tried to look into these. Henry's looked into it as well. Trying to see exactly what sort of squad you're allowed to have. Henry, I'll let you have a little read of this if you want, mate.
Yeah, I mean, we for some reason, I mean, I don't think the information is hard to find. I found quite a good article from a Villa fan who was basically laying out the way of the land for their fans when they first got into Europe. I think a year ago maybe, or something like that, and they basically set out the UEFA rules. I had a look through, and essentially you're allowed. It is quite complicated, so I'll do this as quickly as I can. You're allowed a maximum 25 man, what they call a list A squad. So in that squad, you're allowed up to 17 free players. It doesn't matter where they're from, how old they are, what nationality, where they were raised, what academy they came through, anything like that. And the remaining 8 players of that 25 must be what we call homegrown. We also have that in the Premier League, of course. So 4 of these 8 players that are homegrown must have trained at Palace for at least 3 full seasons between the age of 15 and 21. The other 4 can train at any English club between those ages as well. Um, you can then have an unlimited under 21, what they call a List B squad. So essentially, just academy players, youngsters. The only stipulation for those players is that they must have spent at least 2 consecutive seasons training at the club in question, so at Palace. So no new academy players. So I know we've signed a new fullback this summer. I can't quite remember his name right now, but for example, he would not be eligible because he's not been at the club for 2 years. Um, and that's essentially it in a nutshell. In terms of the squad limitations for us, we don't need to worry because our squad's absolutely tiny right now. Nobody's really going to be missing out, I don't think. I haven't gone through it fully, but we have a good range and a good amount of homegrown players. When you think about the likes of Will Hughes, Nathaniel Klein, they all count as homegrown. Um, and also, like I touched on just now, our squad is tiny, and I'm sure we're going to get onto this later, but Glasner is not happy about that. And, I think we don't need to worry about the UEFA rules in terms of squad sizing just yet. If somehow Steve Parish pulls out his wallet and we end up signing 10 new players before the end of the window and before the European season starts, then we could be in trouble. But for now, I think we'll just about be okay.
Yeah, no, cheers for reading all that out. It is because like all our fans, we just don't really know all these rulings and stuff. So it's good to know there is some kind of leeway for us in terms of we can make a couple more signings and still probably be okay. I think the positive out of that list is the fact that you can have unlimited under 21 players. Palace do rave over the academy. Palace fans are really raving over their academy at the moment. We've seen a fair few of them used in pre-season at the moment. So, there's a few positives. Players, I guess we would say like Jemide, Cardines look quite decent. Um, there's probably a few more that we could get in that squad who'd probably be okay in the conference, would you say, mate?
Yeah, what I think as well, what I think it does is it gives you the opportunity to, I think it's been a conversation for a while that our loan moves aren't very good. And I remember having this conversation on the wonderful Twitter the other day when we were talking about Jesse Derry choosing to swap to Chelsea and about, oh, well, there's definitely no pathway at Chelsea. I was being told. But when you actually look into it, they're the best team in the Premier League simply for creating professional footballers that have careers in the game at any level. And you look at their first team now, there are numerous players that were at some point part of their academy. Um, I think what this does offer us is the chance to the players that maybe aren't quite ready for a loan, but we do want to experience, men's football. We can chuck them in for a half. That's the beauty of the Conference League, if that's what we get, is that there's 8 league games, and of those, you're probably comfortable favourites to win 6 at least. Um, and in that case, you can use a player like Jemide, who's been incredible in preseason. I think he was brilliant last preseason when he travelled.
Yeah.
He's incredible talent. Caleb as well. Deputising for Danny Munoz. If I
Yeah,
don't really want to be going to Klein. I'd like to move on from that if we can. So yeah, it just gives the youngsters a chance. We saw that with Chelsea. Tyreek George played almost every minute of every game in the Conference League and was absolutely fantastic. Would he have got that development and opportunity if they were in the Europa League? Probably not. So again, that for me is one of the big positives to look at with the Conference League for sure.
yeah, no, massively agree. It would be really nice to actually see your academy players come through. Um, it is just so good seeing academy players make it into the first team, and there is the space for it at this current time. You did talk a little bit about squad depth earlier, so we will go into that. Glasner did speak out whilst he was in Austria. And, I will read it word for word so you can all get your opinion on it, but it's clearly not coming from a happy point of view. He spoke to the Austrian media and he said, even though all the players are still here, we haven't made the most of the transfer window so far. I was promised that we would be more active in bringing the new players earlier this year. As of now, I have 17 outfield players. I hope we don't lose more. If that happens and we get 4 new ones on deadline day, like last year, another full start is possible. And the media company went on to say that he was addressing the club's owners and didn't sound impressed. So I'll give my thoughts after you, Henry. What are you thinking about all that?
I think the word that jumps out to me is promised.
Yeah,
Um, I feel like to get a manager of Glasner's capacity and ability, you have to sell him somewhat of a dream. The problem is if you don't fulfill that and you don't follow things through, it's all well and good talking, but if you're not going to actually back it up, we know how frustrated he was with last season. We know how all those late transfers really impacted the start of our season. And in another season, we could have been long gone and we could have been dead and buried. As it was, he's obviously a brilliant manager, and we were able to sort things out. But there were rumours at the start of last year that he was going to get sacked, and that would have been completely unfair, completely ridiculous, an awful decision. So I'm glad we didn't. But there comes a point you need to learn. He this is the man who's led us to our first ever trophy,
yeah,
possibly the last trophy we could win for another 120 odd years. We don't know. You need to back him. I understand that we're pretty good in terms of how we behave financially, but we have billionaire owners. We have billionaire owners, especially with Woody Johnson coming in. He's one of the, he's worth billions. Um, we need to spend some money. Glasner deserves it. He's proven that with a shoestring budget, I would say that he can do incredible things. Give him money and see what he can do. We're not asking him to go out and compete with Chelsea and Liverpool and spend 200 million. But the teams like Brighton and such that have spent 60, 70 million this summer, let's just show that ambition and give him something to, who knows what Glasner could do if we spent that kind of money. It could be absolutely incredible. Also, really quickly, before we go back to you, 17 outfield players. There you go. We are not in any trouble in terms of, the squad rules, unless we're going to take 9 goalkeepers along, which we're not. So we're absolutely fine there.
yeah, for sure. And do agree with a lot you said there. The promise was the big one, and Parish obviously would have promised signings early before this whole Europa saga. But I think that's just a lesson learnt from Parish. You shouldn't really be promising anything really in football, especially in terms of signings for someone like Glasner, who has constantly, since he's been here, asked for more signings, no matter what, really. Do completely understand Glasner's point of view. We do need more squad depth. And I have been happy to wait for this kind of Europa saga to end. But when we're playing the 2 games against Mainz and Augsburg over pre-season, and you're actually seeing the depth we have, that actually makes it a lot more worrying. Edouard didn't even play at Leicester last season. He's now a starting second team player for us, if you know what I mean. He would have to come off the bench now if we had an injury out of our front three, or if one of the front three just was tired in a match. We would need to rotate and use Edouard. Nketiah, I really think there's a player there, but he's not proven it at the moment. Midfield, you would argue, is kind of okay. And then you go to the defence. We obviously got Sosa in, but Klein's playing right wing back still. Klein would probably have to come in at right centre back if we had an issue there as well. You can't be going into your first European season and sadly having Klein as one of your actual key kind of depth players. He's meant to be there to kind of do the Joel Ward role of last season. Be in that squad, be that experienced player. Doesn't really have to get called in upon, but he's going to have to get called in a lot at this current time. So there's definitely worrying signs, and you know, yeah, it's Glasner's got a year left on his contract, and I wouldn't even say, if you were arguing the point, oh, he's only got a year left, so you can't really sign players to help him. I don't really think that's a fair argument anymore because managers' lifespans aren't long anyway. So you got to just get the players in who kind of can play to his style, but long term are still good for us. And we've had some exciting links, but it's getting a bit worrying now, especially if we are in the playoffs because we will have Chelsea, Forest, Europe, Villa, Europe, I think, or something like that. And that's a really tough. That's a crazy tough first five fixtures of the season, especially if you don't have the squad depth. So you know, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes in terms of you know how it feels. Henry, it is starting to feel like typical Palace, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we briefly touched on this earlier. It's never easy for some. I don't know what any of us did in past lives that this is what we have to deal with every single bloody week. But I think you make such a good point. I think it's just so boring now. I'm so bored of this. I just want an answer. I think everyone said this. Dan said it on his Daily Palace podcast. I've heard the back of the nest boys all say, I am bored of this. It's gone on too long. We need an answer. The only thing I would say is that I think it might be a bit too easy to kind of defend the lack of transfer movement and go, oh well, we've been waiting on UEFA and blah blah blah. We know we're playing in Europe. We know we need a bigger squad. We know we need to bring players in. I feel like that's a little bit of a shoddy defence because like we need to sign players every window. We've got we need to prepare for future player sales, whether that's this summer or next season in January, whatever it is. And I just think that it is typical Palace to show a bit of promise and then not really back it up and go for it. I I don't like bringing other clubs into it, but I feel like if we'd seen another team of our stature in the Premier League win the FA Cup this summer, get Europe for the first time, or just get back into Europe, and I hate to bring teams like Brighton up, but it is very hard to feel like if they had done what we'd done this season, they would not have absolutely gone for it in the transfer window, prepared themselves in advance. They're not even playing European football, and they've signed numerous very good players. Players that we could have also been looking at and would have been decent additions for our squad. And it just feels like we've been sitting on our hands. And I understand that Paris is busy with the whole Europa stuff, but like I said, that you need players. That's not this isn't a new story. We always need new players. So the fact that we've sat on our hands and not moved, and now we're just going to blame it on UEFA. We can't blame everything on UEFA. I think that's the point I'll make, is that it is not all UEFA's fault. If we get to the start of the season, the end of the transfer window, and we've not made enough signings, that's not UEFA's fault. It's the club's fault. And I do think there are times when we do need to just be honest about that.
Yeah, I have been defending the fact that we haven't made any transfers at this current time, but now heading into August, my viewpoint has completely changed on that. You can't it with squad depth options, I would argue you don't need to convince them that we're going to be in the Europa League. Yes, the budget is going to be different, but it's meant to be squad depth options. So yeah, I feel like you could still get them in, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
I
no,
love them to
100%.
absolute pieces as well. Sorry, but Mark Gay, Eberechi Eze, their future is massively in doubt. And I would say our strongest links over the last few weeks have actually been more replacements for them. Do you think Palace are focusing too much on possibly losing Gay and Eze when they should actually be more focusing on that squad depth that we want to be getting in?
Oh, it's hard, isn't it? Because obviously you're going to focus on Mark and Ebbs. You're going to, because they're our two best players. I think that something that will not annoy me. It won't ever. I won't ever have any sort of ill feeling towards Mark Gay, but I just sign a 1 year extension with a reasonable release clause, 40 million release clause. You can definitely go next summer. Have that written in the contract if you want, but just give the club, some sort of protection. I think that would be fair. We know why he wants to stay at Palace. He wants to play every week so that he's starting for England at the World Cup. Makes sense. That's completely valid. But just chuck a year on the deal. 40 million release clause, 35 million even, just something so we don't lose him for free. In terms of Ebbs, irreplaceable in my opinion,
Yeah.
but it's kind of similar to Elise when we said this last season. You can't replace the player, but you can try and replace the output, and somehow did that with Sarr. Um, I think that yeah, we're focusing too much on that. I don't think Eze will leave, especially the way Arsenal are playing. They're just, you pay the money or you don't have the player. And this kind of idea that when his release clause expires on the 15th, that his price is somehow going to go down with a
Yeah.
week or so left on. That's not going to happen. He's only going to get more expensive. Um, but yeah, I think we are maybe focusing too much on that. I do agree that a lot of the players we've been linked with are kind of replacements for those players, and it would be nice to just get some in. I know we'll touch on this later, but the rumours about Evan Gessens, it would be nice to just get him in anyway, regardless of what happens with Ebbs. Um, and I think we have always been that kind of side to a lot of the time wait to sell to buy and wait to replace whether in terms of just instead of just adding players to the squad, and that's why we've always had a relatively small squad. We've always had a team that's pretty much the same 11 every week. So yeah, I think it's one of those where you can't blame the club for anticipating the departures of your two best players. You have to do this every season. We'll be doing it next year, I'm sure, for Maxence Lacroix, Danny Munoz maybe, and potentially we're looking at a replacement there already. But you do need to be a bit more active, and I'm a little bit disappointed. I feel like you win the FA Cup and you're like, oh my, I remember thinking on the way home after I'd kind of got into my head what we'd done that wow, okay, we're in Europe, but what summer we could have in terms of signings. We could be busy, big names that we could bring in here. And now what? Three months later, almost, and we've not signed a soul other than Benitez, who's probably not going to play very much and doesn't look very good, to be honest, or Sosa, who has picked up a bit of a knock. So
Yeah, it's a tough one. It looked like it was going to be a positive start to the transfer window when you actually got into positions that you normally loan in players for and actually get them permanently. You're like, there's squad depth. But yeah, we haven't really carried that on. And that's been the most frustrating thing. As I said, I've been someone who's been happy to give it time. And I think I would hope we maybe have two signings in before Chelsea. That's what I would hope. Um, that would be the dream. But I think it should also be something realistic. You get them two extra players in, that moves you up to 19 outfield players. It gives you a cover defender and an attacker. That's the two I would like in before. So that would be really, really nice. Um, Speaking of these kind of transfers we could have, me and Henry have both thought of two dream transfers each. I will quickly go first with mine. Um, Andy Diouf would be an ideal midfielder for me that I'd like us to bring in. I know I was talking about a defender that we need, but I'll let Henry kind of cover that one. But in terms of Andy Diouf, I think we've kind of got we've got the defensive kind of players in Hughes, Lerma they can cover, but I think if like a Wharton is struggling, he needs that lack a bit less game time. He needs a bit more rotation. If we have lots of fixtures or he gets an injury, we really do miss him. And someone like Andy Diouf is a centre mid who's young with potential, but he's known for like a progressive ball carrier and a progressive passer. Um, and I think he'd be a perfect kind of squad depth option for us. And then the attacker I would love to see us bring in is James McAtee. I've been a James McAtee fanboy for ages. He deserves his limelight at a club to maybe push on in the future. Future England potential for sure. Great attacking mid, good on the ball, good technically, can score some goals. Be a lovely option for us. And yeah, Henry, what do you think of them?
I love both of them. I did a deep dive on Andy Diouf. I think he's magnificent, to be honest. I really enjoy how he carries the ball. Reminded me a lot of Yaya Toure when I was watching him. Just an absolute beast. You're not pushing him off the ball, and just really kind of unexpected kind of technical ability, and he's very quick and nimble for someone of such a stature. James McAtee is a brilliant shout. Such a good player. I think there's been a lot of talk around kind of like youth football, people that watch a lot of academy football and stuff that, they can't believe that City could make the same mistake that they made with Palmer with McAtee. We've seen it in glimpses that he's absolutely incredible. I mean, he's not played much for City. He was superb at the under 21 Euros. Unsurprisingly, he's just such a good player. I think that people are sometimes put off by a lack of senior minutes, but you look at Man City's squad and how good their side is, and also how ruthless of a manager Pep Guardiola is. The fact that McAtee, as young as he is, has played as many minutes as he has anyway is a huge testament to his abilities. Um, I think that would be a dream signing. I kind of didn't even consider him because I just feel like that might be a bit out of reach for us. Um,
Yeah,
but I absolutely love the shout. I think he'd be absolutely perfect in one of the wide tens, 100%.
yeah. And what two kind of dream transfers or transfers would you like to see Palace bring in?
Yeah, so it's two that we have been linked with. So first off, Usman Diomande from Sporting. I've said time and time again, this is the best young centre back in the world for me, or has all the attributes to become one of the kind of top five centre backs going forward. When you look at the model we're trying to kind of get into with the buy young, develop, flip for profit, he's a perfect example of that. This is a player that obviously is demanding quite a high transfer fee at 60 odd million euros, but it's a player that you probably, if things go to plan, will be selling for near around 100 in a few years' time. Uh, as far as I'm aware, any sort of movement for Diamonde is purely based on Mark Gay leaving. I think that the club might, if I was the club, I would kind of would have wanted to try and move Mark on this summer. If he's absolutely not signing a contract, you try and cash in. I also understand the argument that some people may raise that having Mark Gay for one season is worth 35 million for us alone. It's a fair argument. I just feel like with what we're trying to do, it might be better if we could move him on, get something in to aid, funding a replacement. In terms of the forward that I've gone for, it's got to be Evan Gessend. He's just incredible. I think I've seen so many people. I've had lots of people message me asking, "Oh, is Gessend coming? Oh, I've watched comps. I'm so moved." It's like, yeah, I'm moved too. This guy is special. He's absolutely brilliant. Had a lot of interest from a lot of Premier League clubs. Um, he kind of reminds me a bit of Ebbs in the way that he dribbles and beats players. He just has that kind of knack of just, it doesn't matter how many players he's got around him, he can just flick the ball through and escape. He's a good dribbler, good finisher, very good on transition, which of course we know is a massive part of Glasner's style of play. Obviously, how he scored the goal in the FA Cup final, etc. So yeah, I think he's probably the shout. I think I don't think we're necessarily close to a deal being agreed, but I think the club are kind of in talks with Nice. So I think he would just be fantastic. And if you haven't had a chance to watch him play, just jump on YouTube and type his name in because he is phenomenal.
Yeah, I really like both of them, and I do kind of agree with your points on Gay in terms of like we love him to pieces, but it's kind of a big spanner in the works not getting money for him and then not being able to recoup the money we could get for him into a replacement. When Diamande demands such a big transfer fee and a club like Palace are willing to spend that, it shows how good a player he can be,
Yeah.
both now and long term, and how the fact that we do believe we could make profit off him. So he would be a great
I
signing
mean,
for
that
us
would,
if we could get him in.
Diamonde would what, double our record transfer fee?
Yes, probably like what 27 mil, 30 mil we spent on like Benteke or Saka. I
Or so
think
in
that's
fact, it's probably,
Nketiah as well.
yeah, it's probably more. Yeah, it's at least double. So that, like you said, that just demonstrates the kind of level of player we're talking about. When have Palace ever been willing to pay anywhere close to that sort of money for anybody ever? We haven't.
Yeah,
So I think you
yeah.
make a very good point there.
Yeah, massively agree. And Gesson as well looks like an absolute baller. Again, another one young, potential, exciting attacker. We want these players at Palace who get fans off their feet. That's my scariest thing about losing Eze is we've had Zaha, Elise, Eze over the years. We need that kind of player who loves to take players on, will sit players down, not make them for fun. And I think Gesson could have them qualities. For sure. So he'd be another exciting signing. I think, yeah, the rumours seem to be speeding up a bit on Gesson right now. So I'm hoping we can get him in. That'd be lovely to see. But I mean, you know what? Why don't we just get all four, Henry? Just get
Yeah,
all
that'd be
four of them.
lovely. And also, whilst we're at it, we should go and pick up Mr. Arnau Martinez from Girona because I think he's literally handmade for Glasner's system.
Yeah,
I think there have been links, weirdly, with us spending 8 million on Martinez and Girona spending 6 million on Odson Edouard. If we manage to get 6 million for Odson Edouard, then hats off to whoever is in charge of that sale, because that is phenomenal work. And then would obviously essentially mean signing Martinez for 2 million if take out the middlemen. I think he'd be a great signing. I don't actually know how true the links are, but a very talented wing back, and also can play very comfortably in that right centre back role. So these are the kind of signings we're talking about when we're looking at Europe. Gessend, he can play striker, he can play off the wing, he can play a little bit deeper in a 10. He has those attributes. McAtee also can play pretty much anywhere you want him to. He's brilliant. So I do think it's really important that these are the players we should be looking at, players that are versatile, players that are talented, players that are experienced, but also players that are really hungry and have a point to prove. Martinez is young. He'll want to be battling for a place in the Spain senior squad before the World Cup. McAtee has a point to prove, especially if he leaves City. Our City have sold another academy player. Haaland, there'll be talks about, not Haaland, sorry, Palmer, there'll be talks about that. Can he live up to that? He'll be hungry for that. So I think these are the signings that we need to look at. And you go to these players and you say, look, yes, we might not qualify for Europe next season, but what we can guarantee you is one season of European football ahead of a World Cup. You can get into your national sides for those tournaments, and it will be an incredible career experience. And I think that's what we've got to do. We've got to take pride in what we do have. A fan base. You can just show them those videos from the final whistle at Wembley. This is what you'll be joining. And I feel like a lot of players would find it quite hard to turn that down, or at least be interested in looking into that. So yeah, I think that all 5 players, let's sign all of them, and then if we do that, I think we could probably just about be happy.
Yeah. Then there may be no complaints on Palace socials, that's for sure. Just whilst we're briefly here, it is the week of the Community Shield. Thoughts on Liverpool, Henry? Do you think we can win that game? We'll try and sum it up quite quickly in terms of this. It is still technically a pre-season match, but I'm going to be claiming it as a major trophy if we win. I hope everyone else would be doing the same.
I like that. If we win, if we don't win, it's a glorified pre-season friendly.
Yeah.
Okay, can we beat them? Yes, of course. We could beat anyone. Will we beat them? Maybe. I think that they've obviously made some really good signings. It's whether they've gelled or not. I feel like Arne Slot is not going to care at all about winning the Community Shield, in the sense that I'm not saying that he's disrespecting the trophy, blah blah blah. I'm just saying that I think that he will see this as a final kind of setup for the season. They want to retain the league title. That's their main ambition. For us, I feel like our starting 11's not changed, and they're all fit. We beat Man City, we could beat Liverpool. That's how I see it. But as you said, if we lose, I don't care. If we win, brilliant. It's another trophy. That's kind of my views on it. What about you?
No, massively the same. I think, you're exactly right. Our starting 11 has not changed, and our starting 11 is genuinely so good. Like, it really is ridiculous. If you talk about competing with all the Prem teams, I think they literally, they proved that they can beat every single Prem team when they're at their best. So yeah, we could definitely beat a Liverpool side who are going to be a bit different, who are still going to need to understand each other. Their fullback's completely different. Up top's going to be different for them. Midfield's going to be different for them. So there is a lot for them to adapt, and this will be their kind of, I would argue it's probably their first proper test to see how it does, because Palace will be taking this 100% seriously, and you don't get that over the other preseason games.
And we also have, like we've touched on, the exact same team. The starting 11's not changed, and this Liverpool could be a side that has 6 new players in it, 7 if Isak signs in before then. Do you know what I mean? So I think, are you going?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Sure.
not, unfortunately. I've got work. I've got work commitments, but also I had a conversation with another Palace fan, and who's not going as well. And I'm going to use his reason, which is the last time I was there was so perfect that I don't want to tar that memory in any way. So that's why I'm not.
Perfect,
So I'll be watching it from home with my feet up. But yeah, I think it's a good test for us as well. It's a very good test. We've not played very good oppositions in pre-season, and we've not done very well. I think you don't look into pre-season results. There's absolutely no point. It doesn't make any sense. Look at Man United; they're doing really well. Is that going to carry on? We'll see. But Liverpool, good test. obviously a great test, a great team, a great club. It'll be an emotional day, I'm sure, with the whole Diogo Jota tributes. I'm
Yeah.
sure there'll be plenty of that, which is great. And I'm sure the Palace fans obviously will join in with that and pay their respects as we always do because we're a classy bunch.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's an exciting game. And again, I think it is a big test for us, you know. Can we compete at the level we were competing last season? We'll have to wait and see, you know. So it is going to be really exciting. That has been all for today. This will be a weekly pod, or a bi-weekly pod maximum. So you will be seeing us twice a week on this podcast on Luke Talks Palace and also Let's Talk Palace on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. If you have enjoyed, let us know your thoughts and let us know what you'd like to see in the future. Henry, anything you'd like to close off on before we leave?
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed today. I think this is going to be a whole load of fun, and I hope that people enjoy listening. Obviously, just follow us both. Subscribe to the pod, leave a 5-star rating on Spotify, obviously, because that just helps us out massively. And yeah, check out all of our work. Luke obviously does incredible stuff on his YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, just click on his channel. You'll see plenty of quality stuff. Come to my page if you want a bit of writing. Also started my own podcast called More of a Six. That's more general football, so I'm quite happy that I'm also doing this. I'm kind of using this to kind of channel my Palace mode, and I'm being a bit more neutral on the other one. So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to the season, mate, and I think this could be very fun and a great success.
Yeah, for sure. That's been all for today. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow, all that jazz, and we'll see you later.